I've got several talks. I was thinking I'd tell you about a famous Toledo one today that was one of my favorites. Amazing story. Did any of you, by any chance, are you from Toledo? Did you go to Jones Junior High, anybody? Did you ever hear of Jones Junior High? The best junior high in Toledo. The boys are the best and the girls are the, it's a great old song. My father taught me that song when I was a little boy. Well, who do you suppose this fella Jones was?
The mayor.
He was the mayor at one time, but you're getting ahead of me now. Samuel Jones. Samuel Mason Jones, came to this country from Wales as a little boy with a third-grade education. And he arrived in this country and grew up somewhere. Nobody seems to know how and where he grew up, but as a teenager, he went to work as any young, uneducated boy would do. He would work in the lumber yards and the sawmills and the coal mines, in the oil fields, the factories, wherever a kid could get a job. And that's what he did. He got mostly interested as he got into his early 20s in the oil business. And Sam Jones thought that was going to be the coming thing. And as you remember, Ohio was quite a oil area. Sam Jones went down to Lima area, not in Ohio, and he messed around working in the oil fields. And he finally got to a point where he could dig his own well. And would you believe this? Jones hit the largest oil well ever recorded in the history of Ohio. The largest, most productive oil well in the state of Ohio was Sam Jones. He started to make a lot of money. And then he formed the Ohio Oil Company. You remember the Ohio Oil Company? That was Sam Jones. And then he sold out to Standard Oil. And now he was really rich. Now I'm going to tell you a story about what I consider a very fine Christian gentleman. And Sam Jones came back to Toledo, and he started a business, an oil-related business called the Acme Sucker Rod Company. Some of you may even remember it, but the Acme Sucker Rod Company made some kind of a pole-like thing that obviously sucked oil out of the mine, or the well, somehow. And that's really all I know about it, and that's probably all you need to know about it. It was a successful product. But the thing that was different is Sam Jones, now mind you, these were hard times. Toledo was in a recession. We're talking about 1896. Times were brutal. Sam Jones started this factory, and he paid his people $2 a day, which was twice as much as everybody else was paying. And everybody else was paying $1 a day for a 14-hour day. That was the standard work day, 14 hours. Sam Jones paid $2 a day for an 8-hour work day. He invented the 8-hour work day. Nobody knows this. I don't know why they don't know this. Then he did something even more radical. He hired women at the same pay rate as men. So wonder if they didn't hang him. Same rate as men. Then he built a nursery in the factory to take care of the children of the women who he had hired at the same rate, $2 a day for an 8-hour day. Then he built a lunchroom and served hot lunches free to his employees. Radical. 1896, remember this. He built a playground and a park outside the factory where they had bands come in and music for weekend celebration. Then he did some more radical things. he gave his employees health insurance. Now, mind you, we're still talking about 1896. Then he gave them a pension plan. Then he gave them stock purchase plans. After 6 months working there, you got a 1 week paid vacation. I mean, this is radical, radical thought. This man. Of course, people loved him. He had one more policy I didn't mention. He had up on the wall, do unto others as you would do unto them. He didn't have any time clocks, and he didn't have any time slips. Radical thought. Now you know how he got the name Golden Rule Jones. He followed the Golden Rule. Principles before profits was his slogan. Golden Rule Jones. Well, needless to say, you know what happens. You get a guy that good, that looks that good, and everybody loves him. The politicians got a hold of him. It started out with the Republicans. I don't know what the difference between the Republicans and Democrats back then was. Doesn't make a difference. The Republicans talked him into running for mayor. And of course, he got elected. He got elected with about 70% of the vote. Everybody loved him. Nobody didn't like Golden Rule Jones. What's not to like? Amazing. Of course, he got elected. And the first day he was in office, in the mayor's office, and he sits there, and all these politicians, or whatever you want to call them, sitting them around him. And they said, Mr. Mayor, now here's what you're going to do. And he said, no, wait a minute. I thought I was the mayor. You're the council. Well, not exactly the way it works. We're going to tell you what to do. They said, that isn't the way I do it. They said, well, it is, Mr. Mayor, and you just hear us out. Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to close the bars on Sunday. Ministers don't like bars to be open on Sunday. Well, now you have to know that Golden Rule Jones was a teetotaler. He never had a drink in his life. But he sat there and he said, I'm sorry, gentlemen, the bars stay open on Sunday. The working man has no place to go for recreation. You guys got your country clubs and you go over there and you play golf and you drink and whatever. The working man has no place for recreation. The bars stay open. Now this is radical. Then they said, well, all right, if that's the way you feel about it. But what you really got to do is you got to get all those prostitutes off the street. They're all over the place, and the public is complaining. He said, okay, just tell me, do I take them to Cleveland or Detroit? Well, they didn't have any answer for that. He said, okay, I'll tell you what to do. I want you to go out and find 2 of the worst prostitutes, and you bring them to my house. And they will come and move into my house, and I will teach them an honest trade so that they can go out and earn a living, an honest living, on one condition. Each one of you takes one home too. That didn't go over very well. But one day, in those days, the mayor used to fill in for the judge if the judge was out or someplace. So one day, Mayor Jones is sitting as the judge, and they brought before him a man who had stolen a loaf of bread. He fined everybody in the courtroom 10 cents and fined himself $1 for living in a town where a man had to steal a loaf of bread to live. Well, that all sounds very nice, but when it came time 4 years later to run for re-election, the Republicans didn't want any part of him. They weren't going to sponsor him again. And the Democrats aren't as dumb as they look either. They said, we're not going to sponsor him. So he ran as an independent. Got over 80% of the vote. He said, nobody likes me but the people. Nobody likes me but the people. He ran a total of 4 times for mayor. The 4th term in office, he died in office. The entire city of Toledo, about 55,000 people at that time, went into mourning. 55,000 people demanded the right to follow that hearse out to Woodlawn. They were all over the lawns where they lived. The entire town was draped in black. Every light was off. The town was literally shut down, and everybody in Toledo went to that funeral except the 8 guys in jail who weren't let out. Isn't that amazing? He was an amazing, amazing man. In many ways, he wasn't perfect. He didn't drink, but he wanted the bars to be open. Of course, he didn't approve of prostitutes, but he would take 2 of them into his house if he could teach them an honest living. One of the policies he established was that if a criminal was wanted, and you know how they used to put the posters in the post office, was wanted, they got the posters in Toledo, if that man came to Toledo to hide out, as long as he didn't bring a gun or other problems with him, he could stay here as long as he wanted and hide out till it was safe to go home. That was Golden Rule Jones' policy. Now here he's contributing to the delinquency of criminals. But that's the way he felt about people. If they're not going to cause any trouble here, let them spend their money here. Not a bad policy. So anyway, I think I've spoken enough. I appreciate your kind attention. You're obviously interested in the same things I am, and I appreciate that. Thank you.